What's going on? Yeah, sorry to be so quiet in chat, guys. Um, yeah, tips for newbies. I'd say it's sort of hard to say what you should really focus on first, other than maybe general aspects of play and just really trying to nail the macro and just the mechanics and just sort of getting a feel for how like PvP really flows, regardless of which matchup it is, and sort of why things like you know tracking town centers and tracking production facilities are important. They're pretty important. Well, they're really important because how are you supposed to know what you're going to counter, or what production facilities you might need yourself, or sort of where you're at in terms of villager production compared to your opponent. That like they're probably really the most crucial things, and like the scouting it out of that, sort of being able to comfortably defend or try and at least put a little bit of pressure on. Maybe not necessarily get everything out of it all the time, but at least try and put a bit of pressure on early, or if not, be prepared to defend against it without over defending, if you know what I mean. Because it's quite common for people, when they first get into PvP, they play really blasé, they get killed. Then the next thing they do, they play really defensively, they get killed. And then the next thing they do, they play really aggressively, they get killed. And then it's sort of once they get through those sort of patterns, in sort of any of those three formats, it sort of comes. Whether they're just outright sort of blasé macroing up alone to themselves, or whether they're just going to try and rush it with this strategy that they're really set on, they think it's cool, it's going to work, bro. They beat their friend with it once. That's pretty common. Fuck, I've done that heaps myself, every single game I've played. So, yeah, basically sort of, you're going to get to a stage where you actually sort of feel comfortable about the game, and that's only going to come about once you've actually sort of played a couple of hundred games, worth of PvP. As to whether or not you should only play one Civ, or whether you should play a couple, personally, I'd probably lean towards playing a couple. Really, I got into playing a couple of Civs pretty early on. I sort of just stayed away from Greek and Persian a little bit to begin with, but I pretty much just swapped between all four of the other Civs myself. And funnily enough, a lot of people recommend starting with Greek to begin with, and yeah, they're a really nice stable Civ. But truth be told, when it comes to Civ picks, I think that's one of the less sort of defining things, if you know what I mean. It's more of being willing to have a go, because as Biggie says, you ain't nobody till somebody kills you. I'm going to record this and put it on YouTube later, don't worry guys, because I think this is going to be a bit inspiring, hopefully. I can make some not too terrible recommendations. But yeah, truth be told, I don't think starting Civ is necessarily the be all or end all or anything, because truth be told, I'm one of the people that will push starting out on Greek just because they're a nice Civ to learn how to defend on and to learn how to get a lot of value out of Spearmen out of. But personally, I really probably started with Babylonian and shifted into Celt. And then, yeah, sort of just played a bit of Egyptian and Norse around the two of those from time to time. Got a bit more comfortable with the other two. Played all four for a bit. Then went, I'm going to pick up Greek. And then, I'm going to pick up Persia. And then nowadays, I pretty much play everything except, Greek, funnily enough. And, I still play them. I'm so fucking bad at Greek, man. Holy shit. I got half the community thinking Greek's terrible just because I'm terrible at Greek. I'm so sorry, guys. And yeah, maybe I probably could have benefited out starting out on Greek, but yeah, truth be told, I don't think it's necessarily the be all or end all. Most of the time, getting comfortable with how scaling up macro works and sort of how important it is to maintain, regardless of how micro intensive the game seems to get, that keeping on top of your macro nearly always takes priority. And it's sort of what people are hinting at when they do the whole, just macro better, bro, is that how to actually do that. for the most part, for most people that are sort of, they picked up the game, they sort of have started to learn control groups, so they're not necessarily really that good at fighting control groups and really, getting a good screens per minute amount out, but they're at the stage where they're comfortable that they've got their macro hotkeys down and they sort of know most of the hotkeys except for maybe things like, Egyptian temples or something like that. So they're pretty comfortable with the beginner steps, sort of, I guess, almost stepping into intermediate territory, if you will, because there's, there really is a lot of really unconditioned players. I'm going to try and refrain from using the term of bad players, because unconditioned players is sort of the better term. They just don't fucking know. Like, I was honestly garbage at RTS coming into playing this game. I still am pretty garbage. I'm just slightly less garbage. I'm garbage with a nice top 10 or nice top 20 ranking every couple of seasons. Well, every season. I just play that fucking much. But that's all you got to do for the most part, is actually just play a lot. Like, but in saying that, you can play too much. I'll get back to that. And I'll get back to this one as well. I'm sort of going too far down the rabbit hole, like... So, anyway, getting back to macro. And what I was saying. Basically, the game is won and lost over people's ability to gather and to spend. Fighting, it's sort of, funnily enough, it's sort of a backseat to all that. For the most part, because truth be told, like, if you aren't getting as much out of your macro as possible, you've pretty much already lost that phase of play if your opponent's able to keep on top of it before it's actually started. And now they can almost throw away what they're doing right there, and you can almost get the perfect counter on what's going on, and you can deal fuck all damage because you've missed 5 villages. You've been housed and you haven't built anything. You haven't been gathering the stone, so your TC is going to be super late. You haven't got any army upgrades, so your late game fight, you're just going to get cut through like a hot knife through butter. All these things, are sort of at the time they seem like little things, and as you improve as a player, you'll get to the point where you understand, the cost benefits analysis runs through your head basically automatically, just about subconsciously. Like, there's probably more conscious thought going on at, funnily enough, like my level of play, not necessarily from me, more from like Crimson and Verhoover and Caben and stuff, because they're actually really intelligent players. I'm pretty fucking sloppy. I just get away with it because I don't know, I've just played a lot. Yeah, the cost benefits analysis running through their head is really good. And what I was going to say is basically the mid levels, it's probably more conscious than it actually is at the top level, just because the top levels are that familiar with it. It just becomes second nature. But what I'm saying is, the guys that are sort of at the upper mid level and stuff, they're making a lot of decisions really quite quickly that they've been able to make just because they've seen how they pan out. And a lot of it, is really hard to sort of go over, because we're talking about knowing whether or not to delay queuing up something or cancelling something or transferring villages or something, or microing like an army of a particular type at a particular stage of game against something else. There's obviously things like how to sort of categorize stuff in terms of importance, like, getting villager kills is really good, saving your units is really good. Those two things are sort of the imperative with your micro, and they might be things where you might make a slight slip up in terms of macro play for it, but just about anything else, it's almost not worth it. You're just about always better off focusing on getting the villager production out, getting that next town center out, getting your next couple of production facilities lined up, getting your upgrades all sort of sorted so you're going to be equal or ahead on those, getting a good circle of vision around your base and your opponents, so you know what you're going to need to expand to at the next stage of play. Like, you're going to need, say, you're on your first hunt, you've scouted your second, you've scouted out your opponent, great. Come back, bring your scout back home, take sort of a long way around, scout out one of the sides a bit, figure out what he's going to do with his cavalry potentially from that side, or with his spearman raids from one side. Maybe even track down a watchtower if you really need to. Personally, I don't use a lot of watchtowers in my play. I actually think they're really costly to have out in the field, unless you say Norse, you're going to get dogs out of them early game, unless you actually get something out of the scout. So, you know, at almost any point, it's always better if you can afford it to have a unit there instead. You know, you've got a scout early game, so obviously, once you've sort of brought him back, done a lap of your opponent's base, for instance, you bring him back, have a bit of a look at the sides, and what your opponent might expand to, or where he might run his cavalry. Bring it back around, scout another hunt for yourself, clear it, so you've actually got 2 hunts cleared. Then send your scout up to the mid map and intercept the spears as they come running across. That's, you know, that's sort of the more advanced way to sort of scout early and get the most out of that, for instance. But with other things, it's actually really quite difficult because it's like, you know, which matchup, how far into the game, and stuff like that. So when it comes to the general tips, yeah, things really sort of have to focus on how you approach your cost benefits analysis of your macro versus micro play. You know, eventually you'll get to the stage where you've got the APM, or it's not really your APM, it's really your screens per minute that's more important. And funnily enough, like, I feel like mine's pretty good for my level of play. But yeah, it's what really dictates your ability to tell what's going on around the game. It's what gives you the awareness. Like, if you can flick from here to over here, like say your TC's up here, if you can flick from here, you know, to over here to where the fight's going on, you know about about to gather over here, you know your other raid's about to hit him over here uncontested, you know he's about to raid you over here, but you've already got units there to intercept it. You know, your screens per minute's actually probably the most important one of those statistics about how you play. And truth be told, getting there largely has to do with experience, particularly, you know, on that balance patch or on that state, because, you know, you can be crazy fast at spamming on the keys, but if you've got no idea what the fuck you're actually trying to do, then you're not actually looking at anything, watching what's going on. You know, you got to spend half the game staring at your mini map, then you're not actually able to look at the center of the map and what's immediately in front of you. But if you can actually flick from screen to 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 screen in a matter of seconds, and this is why control group cycling is actually really, really important, whereas things like spamming on your mouse really isn't important when it comes to high APM. Yeah, basically, in order to build up that sense of being used to it, it largely, yeah, just comes with experience, and things like having a good hotkey setup, I think, is really important. I've already sort of mentioned scouting, macro play, and knowing where you've got to expand onto. So yeah, your scouting's pretty important, and yeah, having hotkey setup that you find comfortable, that particularly, you know, you got your escape key here. I mean, sorry, you know, your escape key. You got your tilt key here. You got your fucking 0 key over here. You guys can't really even see that. So you got your 0 key here, your tilt key here, right? That's your control group 0. But what if that can be your control group 0? Boom. Chuck your TCs on there. Now you've got, you know, 1 to 4 army hotkeys. You got 5 for military production. You got 6 or 7 for alternative production keys, like you want to split your military up, and then across 2 keys. Then you want to have, say, upgrade on a completely separate key, along with, you know, one of your docks or your armories, so that you can rally with that hotkey without it fucking up the other rally. You don't ever really want to have your docks, your town centers, and your markets all on one set of hotkeys, because at least if you've only got 2 TCs and they're on the same hotkey, right? You know, you can click the hotkey, click a spot, double click the hotkey, deselect a TC, and then, you know, click the other spot, and it doesn't really cost you that much time. But when you got 4 TCs or 3 TCs, and you got a couple of markets, and you got a dock, all in that one macro hotkey, it's so fucking hard to try and switch between all of it really quick, because then you've got to deselect them out of the control group, like shift click it out here, the right control shift click it out here, the right one too, or just shift click if it's just one, or it'll just take one out at a time, you know. Or I suppose if you've got a single market and you got 4 TCs, you can actually use it to sort of deselect things out, but that's a bit more advanced. So I'll leave you guys to sort of think about, you know, that one. Yeah, cheers. I'm sort of hoping I'm not rambling too much, but yeah, I'm just sort of covering what I think might be helpful for you guys. Oh, we can't get a game. Sorry, I've been a bit distracted here. I probably should restart actually.